Hello. The next game I'm going to be taking a closer look at is this one from Strategy and Tactics number 52. So this is an old one from 1975. It is called Oil War: American Intervention in the Persian Gulf. So this is back when Strategy and Tactics was run by SPI, and this game I believe was designed by Jim Dunnigan, and it's fairly elegant. It's got a total of 8 pages of rules, but I will tell you, pretty much the last page is all players' notes and developer notes, and the second to the last page is basically victory conditions and scenarios. So there's not a lot in this. It's interesting because it covers some hypothetical ideas of what might have been on the horizon from the perspective of 1975 and what might have been coming up. So there are basically 3 scenarios in this game. Scenario 1 assumes that another Arab-Israeli war has broken out in the Middle East, and the oil-producing nations of the Persian Gulf, in support of the Arab cause, have placed an oil embargo on all nations supporting Israel, namely the United States and the EEC, or I believe that's the European Economic Community. The nations suffering from the embargo, with Israeli help, attempt to capture the oil fields in the area and in an effort to end the oil embargo. So that's one of the scenarios in this game. Here's another one. This could have happened. This second scenario has its premise as an oil embargo is placed on the United States and the EEC for reasons of international politics. The nations being blackmailed by the Persian Gulf states respond with military force. Israel, in an attempt to stave off another Arab-Israeli war, declares neutrality and refuses to even allow American aircraft to base out of Israel. So there's a second scenario that could be looked into, and here's the third one. Continuing border disputes between Iraq and Iran, plus Iranian interference with the Kurdish minority in Iraq, has led Iraq to mobilize mass troops on the Iranian border. Iran, with dreams of empire, attacks first without mobilizing to obtain surprise. The United States, fearing that all Persian Gulf oil reserves will fall under the control of the Iranians, intervenes on the side of Iraq, as do all the other Persian Gulf states. So there's 3 very different scenarios to experiment with in this game, and it has a lot of a detail, even though the rules are short, because it's Jim Dunnigan, has done this. I will say that the sequence of play is somewhat asymmetric, so the American and European Economic Community and Israeli forces have a little bit more complex sequence of play because of their, abilities, whereas the Arab and the Gulf states side have a little bit less, but the game involves aircraft and air unit basing, air transportation, supply, movement, combat, air combat, and all of the like. So it's a fairly basic game. This one also, I will say, has, I think it has locking zones of control in it. However, you're not forced to conduct combat, but it is a way to eliminate enemy units. I think there are rules too for some of the terrain, which has airfields, oil wells, and surface-to-air missile sites. So this was an interesting game, especially for its time. I think it still holds up quite well. So we'll take a little bit closer look at going through some of the turns. If you're interested, stay tuned for turn 1. We're going to go right into turn 1 of of this game. Again, I'll just recap. I'm playing the first scenario, which is assuming an Arab-Israeli war has broken out in the Middle East. We're back in the 70s, and the oil-producing nations in the Persian Gulf are supporting the Arabs, and they have placed an oil embargo on all nations supporting Israel, and specifically that includes the nations of the United States and the European Economic Community. So these nations have banded together with Israel, and they're going to attempt to capture some oil fields to end the oil embargo. So in this game, the map scale is basically 18 miles per hex, so it is somewhat operational. And a turn represents 2 days worth of time, and most of the units in this game are brigades, and there are some air units which are generally squadrons. In this scenario, the Arab player is going to control the forces of Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq, and the American player will control the United States, Israeli, and European units. So the turn starts with the American player, and he has at his disposal 20 air transport points, and these are used to regulate the flow of units that you can bring into the map, as well as to supply units that are already on the map. So at the beginning of this turn, there are no units on the map, so we don't need to provide supply, and any units that do end up on the map this turn are considered supplied during their landing term. So in the picture here, you see 2 Israeli paratroop brigades make a drop in Saudi Arabia. These units are in the light blue color, and they are with the 10 rating and the infinity sign. So each unit basically is a brigade, and it is made up of 3 battalions of paratroops. So these drop into Saudi Arabia, and their goal is to take this airfield in the southern map. Meanwhile, the Israeli F-4s perform air superiority missions here against the Saudi Arabian Air Force, and these F-4s are squadrons of about 12 aircraft each. So in the air combat phase, the Saudi Interceptor Squadron are made up of Lightnings. These are hit and destroyed by the Israeli and the United States naval aircraft that fly in, and you can see that in the picture. These Saudi F-5s are Northrop F-5s, and there are about 14 of them in this squadron. The Israeli paratroopers have surrounded the Saudi mechanized brigade at the air base and the oil field in southern Saudi Arabia. And so a mechanized brigade here would be about 2 battalions of infantry, 2 battalions of tanks, and a battalion of artillery. So these units have been attacked, and they're forced to retreat, and the retreat is through an enemy zone of control, so this Saudi formation is destroyed. Then in Qatar, the United States Navy has a squadron of A-6 Grumman, which are poised to strike the brigade at Doha, and this is going to force the ground unit to retreat from the position that they're in. Otherwise, there's nothing of significance really happening yet in Qatar. We do go to the Arab player turn, and since the main attack appears to be in Saudi Arabia, the Iranian forces have to get there, so they begin to migrate south to support the defense of Saudi Arabia. There are several squadrons which are flown to cover the air bases and including an Iraqi squadron of Su-7s, which is flown in to cover the Israeli forces which have taken control of that southern airbase. There are no counterattacks at this stage, however. And that brings turn 1 to a conclusion. Please stay tuned if you would like to see what happens on turn 2 in Oil War from Strategy and Tactics number 52.